Hello and welcome to this is the 11th episode, I believe, of the Mojito movement. And today I'm joined by probably no disrespect to anyone else that's been on or coming on, but my favorite guest that I'm going to have on. I'm literally going to have a full blown fanboy moment at the start of this episode, and there's zero shame about this whatsoever. I'm joined by Jaret Reddick, and if you're not sure who that is, he is the lead singer of Bowling for Soup. And I will hand over to you in a moment, Jaret, to introduce yourself. But it's customary at the start of the podcast that we cheers the mojitos.
Cheers.
Mine is dripping everywhere, so cheers to that. And then we have a little swig, and I swear mine gets stronger every episode. The perks of
Well,
making them
yeah, and you
yourself.
haven't had dinner yet, so it's probably
No,
going to kick in a little quicker too.
yeah, 100%. So this could go one of two ways. It could be excellent for all involved, or it could just be me getting drunk and gushing about how much I love bowling for soup for an hour.
Like either way, we all win.
Absolutely. So before we get into it, I mean, I imagine most people probably know who you are or who Bowling for Soup are, but for those who are listening that are wondering who this wonderful chap is in front of me on the podcast, introduce yourself.
Well, my name is Jaret. I am in a band called Bowling for Soup, and we've been together 30 years. And if you're most of your listeners, I assume, are in the UK, so we have quite a history with the United Kingdom. We started coming over there in the year 2000, and we've done our fair share of download festivals, Reading and Leeds, Slam Dunk, all of the different festivals. I believe we've toured on our own 35 times or something crazy like that. But I think we're in the mid 50s as far as how many times we've been to your country. There were actually times where
Amazing.
there were times where we were in the UK more than we were in America on a calendar year. So, but you'll probably have listeners from around the world. So, I am, we're a good little band. You probably know one or two of our songs, even if you don't listen to archive music. And I'm also a country performer and a voice actor and a podcaster and a I got a bunch of different jobs. I'm a social media creator now, I guess, because I get paid for that. So I guess I got to add that to the thing. So yeah, I'm a nice guy, and I don't actually like long walks on the beach. I actually find the beach to be, and when I turned 50, I was just like, I don't want to go there anymore, and so I just stay at the pool while the family goes to the beach. And I think I feel like I did my time.
Happy days. And for anyone wondering where they can find you on social media, what's your handles? Where can they find you?
Everywhere is Jaret 2113, and I'm Jaret Reddick on TikTok, but I'm on everything except Snapchat. But I'm on Blue Sky and I'm on Lemonade. I haven't posted anything on there yet, but just in case TikTok does get shut down in our country, you'll find me over there. But right now, TikTok and Instagram and Facebook are my two main things, and that's Jaret Reddick on TikTok and Jaret 2113 everywhere else.
Amazing. So, well, the big reason for getting you on, we're gonna chat all things mental health, and to set the scene for people listening, the reason why I reached out to Jaret, you might be wondering, why have I got a lead singer of a pop punk band on? You are one of very few people who have managed to essentially bring me to tears at two gigs last year. One was your own when I came to see you in London. And we then went to the 1000 Lights gig, which was sort of a memorial gig for Chester Bennington, at the back end of the year. And you did a wonderful video speaking about your own journey. And it was incredibly moving. And as soon as I started doing the podcast and I reached out to a load of people, I was like, do you know what? One of the things that doesn't get spoken about anywhere near enough is mental health. And typically when you see mental health on social media, there's a lot of people that try to tap into it for probably the wrong reasons, for their likes and engagement. And it's typically people crying into the camera trying to tell you that it's okay not to be okay. And as someone who's had my own battles with mental health, I've never once been at the point of a breakdown and thought this would make a great piece of content.
Right.
And I find that sometimes the pro mental health message can be slightly disingenuous. So what I thought would be a great forum would be to have a chat with one of my own personal heroes, somebody who speaks very openly about their own experiences, and just to to share some wisdom, some guidance, and hopefully spread a bit of comfort for anyone that is struggling with their mental health. Because as much as my background is in fitness, I think physical and mental health are two things that are intrinsically linked, and you typically can't have one without the other. So I think it's a really important message. So yeah, so that was the reason for reaching out to you. I thought if you can make me cry at a couple of gigs, you can probably share some incredible insight. So let's get into it. I mean, before we get started, let's take it right back to the start. So Bowling for Soup, 30 years you've been going, which does make me feel slightly better, because I was working out how long I've been listening to Bowling for Soup, and it's over the 20-year mark now, and I thought, God, that makes me feel like I'm aging. So the fact that you've been going for 30 years makes me feel a little bit better, that there was a good 10-year period where I was probably too young to care about pop punk. Talk us through your career, because you've done some incredible things. You're Grammy nominated. You did the theme tune to one of my favorite cartoons. So give us a little history on Bowling for Soup.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I don't do a lot of interviews where I break it down anymore, because quite frankly, most of the time we're just sort of picking up where we are now. But yeah, we started in a small town in Texas, honestly, just for something to do, stay out of trouble. And 94, but everything happened really fast. We played our first gig less than a month after we started. We had an album out 3 months after we started. I mean, recorded and out 3 months after we started, and we're already playing gigs, and all of that happened fairly well, very organically, very quickly. I say we started playing gigs and getting people to come see us play gigs are two different things. So it took several years to develop a following. But that did eventually happen. We moved down to the Dallas area in 96, and kept putting out records, and had gotten ourselves on some radio stations, and then come 99 rolled around, and we had released a song called The Bitch Song, and it was getting great radio play in Texas. And so a guy who wasn't even an A&R guy for a label, he was a publishing guy, heard the song and flew down to see us, and basically became an A&R guy for Jive Records, pardon me, just to sign us, named Howie Abrams. And so we got a record deal in 99. And like everything else in our career, that's 5 years in, and which is an eternity to a young band. 5 years is a long time. That's longer than a lot of bands stay together. Well, it was another 3 before we saw any real success. And by real success, I mean like actually could pay rent and that. So, but in 2001, the Bitch Song kind of caught on there in the UK. Kerrang Radio started playing it. Kerrang TV started playing it. It was on this thing called The Box. And the UK started their love affair with Bowling for Soup, and we started our love affair with the UK.
Yeah.
And so in that respect, the UK was very important in us getting to do a second record with Jive, because that record had not done well over here, but we did enough over in the UK to where the label found it interesting. We were really low on the totem pole. I mean, Jive Records was the biggest independent label in the world at that time. They had Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, R. Kelly. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And, and then their subsidiaries had Tribe Called Quest and Fat Joe. And so in the hip hop world, they were just huge as well. So, but yeah, our second major label record came out, which would be our 5th record, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, our 6th record. And so as I say, overnight success, our 6th album, where we're 8 years into our career, 9 years into our career, and Girl the Bad Guys Want comes out, and massive hit in the UK, not a hit here at first. And then
That surprises me.
Yeah. And then we, but that's at first. But again, we had this momentum in the UK, and everybody just caught right on. And we had toured enough to where all of a sudden now we're headlining and pretty nice places. And but then we got a Grammy nomination, and our song crossed over into what's called pop radio over here. So our radio works a lot differently in the United States. Like each station only plays that or their one kind of music. So we had been playing on rock stations. So along with Tool and the rock bands, and the bitch song hadn't worked. Girl, the Bad Guys wasn't working. When they switched us over to pop, where, like I said, Britney Spears, NSYNC, all of that stuff it worked. And so we did end up having a hit over here in the States. And so that's pretty much, the ride up until the point where things really started to okay, we're going to be able to do this. And that's when we finally, 9 years in, we finally got on a tour bus. And so yeah, since then we've been touring. We've had a lot of hits since then. Actually more hits in the United States than the UK now, which is interesting. But still bigger crowds in the UK than anywhere in the world. And, but still doing great in the United States as well. Touring is getting bigger. 30 years in, we're bigger than we've ever been, both literally and from a figurative standpoint. Yeah. Yeah, man, it's just been, it's been super cool. It's been a really good ride along the way. As you said, we did the theme song to Phineas and Ferb. I also played a character on that show. We did the theme song to Jimmy Neutron. We did I wrote the theme song to Team Hot Wheels on Amazon. It just kind of just goes on and on and on,
Amazing.
Have a good run. Yeah. And then along the way, also, I started a few other bands. One of them did pretty well over there, called People on Vacation. But I have another band called Jaret and Kelly, with Kelly from the Dolly Rots. We've toured over there. And as I said, I keep saying this like your whole audience is UK, but I think it's just because I know I'm talking to you in the UK, and in between these interviews today, I'm working on our UK tour, which is in February. So that's just where my brain is. But yeah, that's a pretty good, synopsis of where we're at. We've our original drummer left in 96 and Gary started. So Gary's been here the whole time, pretty much. And our bass player, Eric, who everybody knew and loved over there in the UK, left in 2017. And so Rob's been here since then. But everybody loves him just as much. And so, we're a tight knit group. We love each other. As I said, we just got off vacation together. So
amazing.
That's we just spent the most time we've spent together in years, and then we come home and just instantly leave and go on vacation together. So that tells you a little bit about our relationship.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's great when you find that community, whether it's in your sense with the guys in the band that form a family, whether it's from a fitness perspective. I know a lot of people, they go to the gym because it feels like a family, it's a community. I think having that close-knit group of people around you that your ride or dies, you can count on them for whatever, is so important to achieving this thing that we are all chasing, called happiness and enjoyment of life. I think the story of Bowling for Soup is absolutely incredible, and just hearing you talk about it, I can literally pinpoint all the little milestones for me where like it went from like, this band's pretty cool, to this band's fucking ace, to just here we are like 20 years later, and I'm about to come and see you when you're playing my hometown in Bournemouth. It's the last show on your UK tour, so I'm absolutely buzzing for that and coming to see you guys again, because I say it to everybody, you're literally one of the best live bands I've ever seen. Every time I come to your shows, I just have the best fucking time, and that's what live music is about. It's about cutting loose. It's about kind of forgetting everything that's going on and just being in the moment and having a great time. Now, I guess where I want to kind of go with this in terms of the mental health side of things is you've had your own battles that you speak very openly about. And I would love to dive into that a little bit, because it's got to be one of those things when you're young, you start to get that overnight success, 6 albums in, and a good few years in, you start to realize that you're doing the thing that you've always wanted to do.
Sure.
And when you look at like pop punk as a genre, particularly its perception in the UK, it was very much like very juvenile. It was very fun. It was just basically like late teens, early 20s guys just having the best fucking time. You had like the Jackass crew around. You had yourselves, Blink, Green Day, all these massive bands that were just great fun. Sum 41, the music was funny. It was, you could relate to it. It was about teenage angst, but it not in an emo way, but just in like a kind of almost poking fun at it. And that kind of builds this perception that you guys are just all about having fun. You're larger than life, that you're just permanently happy. And I, I distinctly remember at your show last year in London when you spoke about your battles with mental health. Just kind of taking a step back and thinking, like, it surprised me that people who you always perceive to just have the best life, have the most fun, also can get affected by mental health. And something I've always maintained because of my own journey with it, is that mental health doesn't discriminate. It can affect anyone at any time. There's not a single person that's immune to it. And even if you're listening to this and thinking, well, I've never had any problems, like I've never suffered with my mental health or with mental illness, like that's fantastic. But without being a cynic, there's always time from that perspective. And I think what I would like to understand is, from your perspective, what were your triggers? What kind of led to you being in that dark position? And did you recognize it was happening at the time, or was it kind of a slap in the face, like, oh fuck, this is where I am, how did I get here?
Well, first of all, thank you for this platform, for allowing me to come on here and talk about this. There's a lot to unpack in your lead up to this and in the question itself. So if you don't mind, I'll sort of tiptoe back a smidgen and say that I'll start by saying I really didn't want this to be a cause for me. Because I've always been the happiest person I know. I think most people will tell you that I'm probably the happiest person they know, or at least will tell you that I'm one of the happiest people that they know. And that persona of the whole pop punk thing, especially the Bowling for Soup thing, of us being sort of that relief from the real world, which is what we've because as you said, in the early 2000s, Blink-182, Sum 41, all the bands were funny, but some of them decided to kind of grow up a little bit or take turns or whatever. And musically, we're so lucky they did, but we stayed the course. We stayed in this thing. I'm not saying in any way does that make us better, or it's just what we chose to do. Our band's choice was to say, hey, this is the kind of music that we make. This is the kind of attitude that we put forth. We're going to stay this direction right here. And, I always said that, it's like, because Sum 41 are very good friends, and, they tend to get a little bit political. And I'm like, nobody wants any political shit from me. Like that, I'm the last person, and honestly, if I were to give you any political advice or anything like that, you should tell me to shut up, because I have no idea what's happening. I have no clue what's that, because I don't fill my head with that stuff. I know enough to get me through the day. Right. So I never wanted it to be a cause. Fast forward to this conversation and you saying that you're sitting there in the audience. You've bought tickets to my shows before. You think that dude's so happy. His dreams came true. He's like, what could possibly be wrong in that guy's life? I'll tell you, nothing. There isn't anything wrong in my life. My life is great. I have great kids. I have a great wife. Me and my ex-wife get along. My parents are still around. Like I got 3 dogs that I love and a cat that only loves me. Like I have a great life. Nothing's wrong with my life. I just got depression and anxiety. And that leads me to how that happened and when that happened. Nobody can say how, and a lot of people can't say when. I can pretty much tell you when. As I said, I have always been the happiest person that I know. I'm nice to my own detriment. In fact, I'm a very forgiving individual. There's just not a lot of negativity that goes on in my head. I'm not negative about situations. I'm a cup half full guy. I'm a bright side guy. In fact, my wife and my best friend call me benefit of the doubt guy, because in all situations, I'm just like, I give everybody the benefit of the doubt. And that's how my life has been, honestly, my whole life. And I didn't fight a lot of bad moods or things. I had experienced what will become to know as anxiety before, but I not in any ways to where it made it hard for me to complete tasks or to go about my day. But when I turned 40, I went through some difficulties in my marriage at the time. Both of us were at fault, and we went to therapy for about a year. We would go on to get a divorce. During that time, I had decided I was going to break my band up. So if you're in the UK, you can probably tell me what year that was. I can, 2013. Yeah. So anybody that's ever given me shit about us fake breaking up, listen to this shit. No, I was breaking the band up. When we scheduled that farewell tour, it was legit. It was, I was at least stepping away from it because I was trying to save my marriage. Now, by the time we got there, I was already divorced. And at that point, I'd already decided, well, fuck, like once I get my shit together, I guess I don't have to stop, but that none of that is important. At the same time, so I'm getting a divorce. I'm fighting for custody of my kids. I had 2 kids at the time who I'd seen every day and all day since they were born, unless I was on the road. And my studio's in my house, like I was always with my kids. So then I'm in a new relationship, and then I decide to put my house for sale that I'd lived in since my son was born. And I'm moving to another place. During all of that, I began to just have days where I couldn't get out of bed. I'd find myself just curled up in the fetal position all day. I could get up, I could feed my dogs. If it was my week to have my kids, I could get them off to school, and then I'd go right back in and lay down. And I had no idea. That had never happened to me before. And it was a very long battle. When I say 2 years, I'm not really that much off. Now, during those 2 years, some things were happening, and I did start to work on it, but it got so bad that, I was in pretty good shape at the time. But I stopped moving. I completely stopped taking care of myself. If I was around people, I just drank. And obviously, if you're a Bowling Pursuit fan, we talk a lot about drinking and stuff. But I mean, I was drinking in excess of what I needed to do. Again, I was able to take care of my children. I wasn't making any dumb decisions as far as stuff like that was concerned. But I was just really, honestly, self-destructing.
Yeah.
And
it becomes a crutch and almost an escape, doesn't it? Because and again, obviously, I don't want to interject too heavily, but I know from my own experience, the first time I ever suffered terribly with my mental health, I was working an office job at the time, and I was always the really loud, happy person in the office. And if I was ever not that whilst I was there, people would be like, "What's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
So you find these coping mechanisms to be able to put that front on. So when, like, for yourself, when you're around people, you drink that little bit more so that you can come across like, hey, I'm the fun guy, look at me, I'm having a great time.
Yeah, that's just it, right? As I get into all of that, these feelings, I talked to my doctor about it, and I was encouraged a lot by my wife now, who was we were seeing one another at the time, and I spoke to him about it, and he was like, yeah, it sounds like you're having some problems with anxiety, and let's start to treat you for that or whatever. And I got a little bit of relief, and then I just spiraled downward really, really quick. And long story short, I would then start to go over that 2-year period. I tried a few different medications. I started seeing a therapist, and essentially I got diagnosed with depression. And it's pretty bad. It's like, I mean, you got fucking crazy depression, bro. depression and anxiety. So I go back and I tell my doctor, I'm like, yeah, man. He says, this guy says I got depression. He goes, yeah, I think that's where we were getting here too. And he's like, Jaret, in the last 2 years, you've gone through a marriage breaking up and trying to put it back together, a divorce, fighting for custody of your kids, moving to a new house, getting in a new relationship, breaking up your band that's been your livelihood and your best friends for this amount, 20 years at the time. Any one of those could force someone into a spiral, into a mental health episode or some sort of depression, anxiety, whatever. And you got them all at the same time. So that was the first time I'd ever felt any of that stuff. And I was in my 40s. And so I listened to him. I went to my therapist. I got my band back together, after about a year and a half. And we were doing well. Medicine started to work. Sometimes we can talk about medicine later if you want. I'd be happy to give my input on that. But
yeah, for sure.
I'm a fan. It's just there's no magic pill. So basically, I'll just say it now. Like when you do go to get medicated, it's very important that that 6 weeks in, you need to be communicating with your doctor and say, hey, this is how this makes me feel, so that they can adjust things or switch things up. And I know it works differently in the UK, but that's my experience. And I've tried everything. And, but the ones that I'm on now, I've been on for quite some time, and it's working for me, but I still see a therapist. I still talk to my doctor about it every single time I'm in there. I see also a separate psychiatrist over here, which I don't know if that's a thing there, but,
I think on that point, just quickly, I think that really emphasizes the importance of, going down the medicated route when you're suffering with your mental health, whether it's depression, anxiety, whether it's a combination of the two or something else. The medication is there to help you manage the immediate feelings that you have, so that you can create the space to have the capacity to do the work that's required in the background to help address the underlying issues. And I think that's really powerful and really important to highlight the fact that, yes, you utilize medication to help with how you feel day to day, but you're doing the work in the background. You have a psychiatrist, you have a specialist that you see, you speak to your doctor, and you go to therapy, and you do all these things, so that it's not just, I take medication, it numbs that feeling, I'm okay.
Oh no, yeah.
You're acutely aware of the fact that actually that creates the space for you to actually do the work that's needed to help bring you out of that dark place. And I think that's incredibly powerful and really important to highlight.
It's also very important to know that I still have those bad days, and so I still have to do those things that I know help me see the sunshine. I tell people all the time, you got to go look at the sun, not look directly at it. That's bad for your eyes, but go out and let that touch your skin. If you can.
Yeah. Some
people like to put their bare feet in grass. It sounds silly, but these things work. But I drink a lot of water. Like I am so hydrated all the time. I mean, I drink a lot of water, and that's very helpful. And again, getting back in the gym over the last 6 to 8 months. I mean, I admit, and that's your life, and you preach it to people all the time, but I will tell you, it absolutely fucking helps. It just does. And when you're in those states of like not wanting to move or whatever, you can talk yourself out of it. You can be like, that's not going to help. I don't feel like doing that. And, and that's really what started the weight gain with me as well. Was I was, first of all, I wasn't doing anything. And then by the time I started doing something about my mental health, then people are making comments about my weight. And I'm just like, well, fuck it. If I'm fat, I'll just fucking be fat then, and I just, you get depressed about being fat. Now you're depressed about being fat, so you don't want to go do anything about it. So then you just get fatter, and it's and it's so hard to explain that to people, but I mean, fuck it. It's my experience, and I can tell you what happened, and you can take it or whatever. But so I'm all of this has happened. I'm dealing with all of this stuff, and a friend of mine started this thing called Louder Than Stigma on Facebook. And he was just basically going around. He's a psychologist who was in a band in Dallas here. Still is sometimes, but he has a charity that I work with here in the Dallas area. And he just wanted to do an interview with me and talk to me if I had ever had any mental health stuff. And I was like, yeah, man, I'll talk to you about that. But up until that point, I'd never told anybody anything outside my circle ever. Right. And so he sat me down and I started telling this story that I'm telling to you. And, I got a little bit more in depth about my experiences with it and, what the things that it did to me, physically, mentally, all of those things. And every after I would say something, he'd go, that's depression. That's depression. You know what I mean? And I just felt so validated and I felt so good getting it all off my shoulders. Like I felt like it's like therapy. When you go to therapy and you just have I did this yesterday and I like fucking walked out of there and my shoulders were back and I felt like I was 3 inches taller, and I was just like, man, I fucking feel great, and I walked outside, but it just, sometimes when you get that weight off of you, of just how much pressure it puts on you, you just feel so much better. But even after that interview, I had said, I told my publicists who are UK based, and I said, listen, here's the deal. This is about to come out. I do want to push it because I want to help him. But I do not want to be asked about this in interviews and stuff like this, in Bowling for Soup stuff. I want to talk about Bowling for Soup music, shows, my dogs, farts, all that shit.
Yeah.
And he goes, all right, and then, people started emailing me, texting me, about that interview. And they, and people were saying, dude, I had no idea. Or, dude, that's amazing. I'm going to make an appointment. Or, dude, what do I do? Or, dude, and I was just like, holy shit, man, just one interview. And I thought to myself, I was just like, man, even if I don't want to, this is my responsibility now. Like, I don't have a choice here. Like, I feel like I was put on this earth to make people smile. But some people are carrying around all this fake front because they don't have it in them, and now I have an outlook and the tools to tell somebody like, hey, you don't have to feel alone, man. You like, I know exactly what you feel like, and you don't have to feel that way. And here are some things that you can do, and here are some places you can call, and here are some websites you can visit, and and that's how it all started. That's how, and basically we got from that to each night during our show, I take, and the guys are amazing to let me, they don't have the kind of issues that I have. Everybody experiences anxiety from time to time. And I am definitely the house specialist because nobody has it near what I do. But, I mean, everybody, even crew guys experience it. And one time they'll come to me like, hey man, I'm feeling this way. And, here are some things you can do. But that's what got from, not wanting to ever talk about it to being like, oh, that's now part of my show. Even if I don't play Turbulence, I still will come out there and talk about it for a couple of minutes each night, because every single show, somebody is out there that I can reach. Just like even if I don't reach them to the point of, like you said, even if I don't reach them to the point of getting help, I can at least open up their eyes, like I did yours, to go, oh man, if it can happen to that guy, it can happen to anybody, because that dude's obviously doing what he loves, and I thought he was the happiest person on the planet, And
and again, from my own perspective, and probably speaking for so many people that have been through it, and I would never consider myself to be healed. I don't think you're ever fully healed from mental health issues or mental illness. I think you go through periods where you're managing much better, but once you've suffered, I genuinely believe you're more susceptible to suffer again. And for me, just that, like I said, it was the show in London last year, probably this sort of time last year. I think it was sort of January, February time. Just hearing you talk, it again, like you referenced with regards to when you speak to your therapist, I felt so validated in that moment, because you hear other people suffering, and when you're in that absolute shit show of a place that is struggling with depression and anxiety, everything's looking inwards on you. You become very reserved. You kind of push everything away, and it becomes so all encompassing, but also so isolating at the same time. So when you hear other people that you kind of look up to and respect, and that have brought you happiness, ultimately, like music for me has always been an escape, the same as sport. I play a lot of football, soccer as you would call it, and that's always been an escape for me. And when I've had injuries, that's typically when mental health's been at its worst, and that's normally where music kind of steps in, and there'll be specific albums, specific songs, specific bands that I will listen to more, because I know that I'm not in a great place, but if I listen to stuff that makes me feel good, it kind of just helps make the day a little bit better. And being at your show and hearing you talk and being like, fuck, like, I know how that feels, but also selfishly I felt completely validated, because I was like, actually, that's exactly what it's like. And it is such a powerful message, and I love the fact that you're owning it, and that you see it as your responsibility as part of your show. The fact you're there to bring happiness, to bring joy to people, and kind of still be that same pop punk band that you were 30 years ago when you started, that sing songs about getting drunk and fucking birds and just having a great time. But you've also got the ability to say, look, yeah, we're gonna make you laugh with our songs, we're gonna put a smile on your face, we're gonna encourage you to get drunk, but equally, if you're struggling, we know how that feels too. We're here to provide whatever kind of support. And I just think it's so powerful, because too many people think, understandably, when they're struggling, that they're the only person going through it. And it's a very weird situation, because actually, with the majority of illnesses, if you get them, physical, whether it's the flu or whatever it is, when you get it, you're aware of everyone else that's got it. But mental illness it still carries such a stigma in society that people are too afraid to say anything. And obviously in the UK, I don't know if the attitudes are different in the US. In the UK, we've got this like age-old tradition of like stiff upper lip, like you just keep going. I'll just
well, yeah, we
muddle on through.
Ours is rub some dirt on it, and but yeah, I mean, I think in all areas, to me, it's funny, I found the UK to be more accepting than the US at first. I feel like we're about level now, I do feel like everybody is like, there's a whole generation, especially where I live in Texas, like dudes who are just like, hey, rub some dirt on it. But and that's fine. All of that's fine. If they don't want the help. But the problem is that then, they have kids who just really just need the support, because kids have it way harder than we had it, man. I'm telling you, we joke about it, and I say, oh man, our life was fucking tough. And our mental health wise, the way shit is now for kids, it's unbelievable what they have to deal with social media and things like that, because everything's instant. It used to take a roomer, a week to get around the school. It's literally instant right now. And, they've got it hard. But I do want to back up to something that you said, because I totally agree with you in that, it's funny, playing music used to be the thing that I relied on the most to just take everything, to make all the bad things go away. And then I found myself in a place where it was something that was being taken away from me because of those feelings. And quite frankly, it didn't really help me to go out and play in front of people. It made it worse. Getting in front of 2,000, 4,000 people and acting like you're having a fun time when you're just a wreck inside it's not fun. And I'm up there telling jokes and shit. And it's just, that was a hard time for me. I too am not cured. Nobody, I don't think you ever are. I have really bad days sometimes, but for the most part, I have it under control. And again, I'm medicated. I see three therapists between all of the different things that I do. And as you said, it takes a lot of work, to constantly be, making sure that I am doing what I need to do, but it also, I think where I was going with something else that you said was, and it's funny that you said the flu, because I compare it like that. I always say You know, if you've never experienced, mental health hiccups and speed bumps and things like that, if you've not had issues with your mental health, then you don't know what it feels like, and so you could think to yourself, oh man, dude, it's not that bad, just get over it. Quite frankly, most people, it's not just, when you're like, what's wrong? If it's depression, anxiety, they don't have an answer for you. I can't tell you what's wrong with me. And even if I couldn't tell you what it feels like. Like I can't tell you what a broken arm feels like. I could try, but you still really wouldn't understand it unless you broke your arm. I could try to describe to you what a sunburn feels like. I think I could get close, but it's still, you would not know what that feels like until you have it. And I think that that's what people need to understand. Like if I've got the flu, you're like, oh shit, what, you got the lurgy, you got, what do you got? You shit in your pants, which one do you have? And, you narrow it down to a couple of things. You're like, I know exactly what that feels like.
Yep.
But we can't do, if I stub my toe, I know, exactly what that feels like. Right. But I can't tell you what depression feels like. I can't tell you what anxiety feels like. I can tell you, to me, what they both feel like, what the difference is between them, and what they feel like when they're together. And quite frankly, they are a rotten fucking duo. If you're listening to this, I do hope that, anyone who experiences both, and especially both at the same time, is getting the help that they need, because it is unlike anything that you could ever imagine.
It's it's crippling. Is the only real word that I can ever sort of think of that it doesn't even do it justice, but it's the only word that I think it kind of summarizes it. Is that it's just completely crippling when you've got the two together. It's that overwhelming feeling of not wanting to do anything because you have no desire to, because you don't want to see the next minute, let alone the next day, the next week, and coupled with the absolute fear of everything around you in terms of just what's going to happen to you. Why do you feel this way? And it's a horrible, confusing experience where, and again, I imagine it's probably different for most people. I know for me, it was a combination of not wanting to feel the way that I did, not wanting to necessarily wake up the next day, but also being absolutely petrified of what would happen if that did happen.
And here's the other thing that it does to you. It takes it makes all of those things that you need to do to combat it. It makes all of those things like the thing that you want to do the least. So talking to people, you don't want to talk to people. You don't want anybody around you. Talking about it is the first thing you can do even if it's to a friend, just going, hey man, I'm going through a rough time. Here's what's happening. I can't pinpoint it, but my heart's beating, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just feeling like this. I'm overwhelmed, whatever. You will feel better just getting that out. A lot of people will text me or, message me and say, hey man, I'm in a bad way. I've got, this is going on right here. Like, what do you recommend? What could I do? And I said, well, you've already started. You typed up this message. You're already going. You're well on your way to recovery. But again, it also makes you not want to drink water. It makes you not want to eat food or eat too much food or whatever. And I'm certain that it is different. Go ahead.
I was going to say there's a couple of things. There's two things I want to come back to in terms of sort of social media shortly. But on that point, in terms of, I think it's amazing that people feel comfortable that they can reach out to people that are close to you, not least because of the work that you've done in terms of sharing your experiences and helping people. But I wonder if you're similar to me in terms of I almost find it easier to help other people than I do to help myself. But at the same time, when you've been through it and you are still constantly battling it, do you find it puts a bit of a strain on you individually when people are reaching out to you and saying, hey man, I'm struggling, I'm not in a great place? Do you ever have those moments where you almost wish that you could just deal with your own shit and not have to deal with that? Or do you find actually when people reach out to you, it's a nice distraction from your own situation and it almost helps you to come out of maybe a tough spot yourself, because you can channel your energy into helping somebody else, and it may feel easier to do that than to help yourself?
It's a really good question. And I'm going to say it's kind of a combination of both. sometimes I'm in a place where that message comes in and I'm, am just like, okay, like let's, here are some things, or here's some answers to your questions. Here's some things. And sometimes I'm like, man, I'm really sorry about this. Like, go visit this website, and I feel like there's not a right or a wrong way for me to handle it or do it. But I will say I can get a little bit overwhelmed at times. I feel like sometimes I'm just so overwhelmed by, the amount that I take on to myself anyway, that it probably, hinders my ability to be as open about, every single message as I can be. But I will say that I give everyone, I try. I'm just going to say that's really all I can do, right? Is just try my best, because I'm not a therapist. I'm not, I'm not that, but I don't mind being that's why I do things like this though, because at least if I can't, and also you got to remember, I don't see every message I get because Facebook hides a big number of them from me. Instagram hides a big number of them from me, and to go back through all of the ones that I've missed it's impossible to do that. So I don't even see every message I get. So I'm certain that there are a lot of people that go unanswered. So that being said, it's the reason why I allow myself to sit here and do this, which, is both therapeutic and, also like, I'm a little anxious right now because, when you're talking about it, and especially in this kind of environment, it's a lot of rehashing. It's a lot of like bringing back up those old times or whatever, like some of those things of the feelings that I had. But again, that's what I have the power to deal with that now, and so again, the reason why I talk about it on stage, the reason why I talk about these things with you, the reason why I will type it up sometimes, the reason why every once in a while I put it out on TikTok and all that is because, if I'm not there, if I can't be there for everybody, at least I can put it out there so they can find it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's why I really wanted to do this episode and I really wanted to have this conversation with you is because I alluded to it right at the start. Social media is, and there's a big piece that I'm going to dig into about social media in a moment, based on some of the points that have been raised. But social media is a great platform for raising awareness. The trouble that we have is there are a lot of people that like to capitalize on trends in order to gain their own exposure and popularity. And I think the movement around trying to break the stigma to do with mental health was fantastic. It was absolutely needed and warranted because for a long time, mental health was just dismissed, and I remember conversations that I've had with like my own grandparents, going back years ago, and you said, you say you're not doing too well. Well, what have you got to be upset about? Come on, pull your socks up, like crack on with it. Like it's not that big a deal. Things will get better. And there was a very dismissive attitude to mental health and mental illness, and not just a dismissive attitude to it, but also for those that really suffered, it was kind of like, oh well, he's an alcoholic, and it's like, yeah, but why is he an alcoholic? Like, what's led him to this? But people kind of viewed it as, well, you're wasting your life, rather than like, I can't even think of like specific people, but I just remember growing up, the perception of so and so would be going through a divorce, like not able to see his kids, lost his job, and oh yeah, now he's an alcoholic. What a waste of what a waste. And you go, well, nowadays you'd look at that and go, Jesus Christ, the man lost his house, his family, his job, like everything, and the only thing that was still there for him was alcohol. And whilst it's not a great thing to turn to, like you recognize that now. So I think social media has done a great job of shifting perceptions. The challenge that we have is people jump on it, whereas in forums like this, it's not me creating a piece of content that says, hey, do you know what? When I was in my early 20s, I tried to commit suicide. Hey, do you know what? When I was in my early 30s, I tried to commit suicide. It's and people kind of go, is this a weird flex? Like, what are you trying to achieve from this? I think these forums create an open space to share experiences so people can take comfort from it. First and foremost, they can hear other people are going through similar things to what they're experiencing, but also we can share some of the the lessons that we've learned along the way of how we've managed it. And it's not that how we've managed it is right and the best way, but if one person listening to this goes, do you know what? Hearing Jaret say that he sees a psychiatrist, has a therapist, and speaks to his doctor about how his medication's making him feeling, gives them the empowerment to go, I'm going to start doing that. It could
Yes.
be the difference between somebody wanting to wake up the next day and praying tomorrow doesn't come. And I
Right.
think that, these forums give a great platform for genuine conversations and
Yeah.
exposure to a subject that needs to be spoken about.
Yeah.
The bit that
Just to go back on what you were saying though about,
Mm,
and especially, older people, or, people who aren't even educated on what mental health is, when they do have a negative attitude about it, that just you're wasting your time, or what's wrong with you? Just get up and go to work. Like, what's the problem? I think it's so important to note that how much research has been done on it just in the last 20 years, the last 10 years, just
mm,
how what medications, how far they've come, and all this, and how far just psychiatry and psychology and all those things. I mean, it's 30 years ago it wasn't even close to being the same thing, and so, and then just even the you know being able to get those things, to be able to get, I mean, it's hard to find a therapist in this country. Most of them don't take insurance.
mm.
And even if they do, a lot of them are religious based. And so, not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's like, that wasn't really the direction I wanted to go with it. I really didn't want it to be sort of like, this is going to be dependent on you, but also there's this whole other thing, I
Yeah,
didn't want that.
yeah,
And so, but yeah, I think it's just important for people to just think about who you're listening to whenever it's time to when you're sharing what your feelings are or whatever. And if somebody's being negative about the fact that you're thinking that you need to seek some care, or to do something to take care, kind of just take stock of who it is that's giving you the feedback. If it's your mom or your dad and they're older, or it's your grandparents or whatever, it's like, maybe that's not the person. Again, I think maybe your doctor, maybe your best friend, reach out to Punk Rock Saves Lives. We don't have a UK chapter, but we'll still answer your emails. There's people out there that will listen and that will understand and will be able to tell you, hey, you're not alone in this.
mm. And I think that's really, really important and absolutely amazing. Again, having those channels that people can reach out to, because one of the issues that we have in the UK, for example, is the mental health sector of the NHS is severely understaffed and underfunded. So I've had my own experiences where we've got tech services that you can reach out to if you're really struggling, and you send a message to a tech service because you're at a point almost of crisis, and you get told that you're kind of like, you're in a queue, and you get a message every half an hour, do you still need to speak to somebody? And it's kind of like,
Yeah.
when you're not in a great place, being like made to feel like you have to wait for somebody to help can be, it can be soul destroying. Because for me personally, I've one of the overwhelming feelings when I've not been in a good place is that I'm not worth anything. I've
Mm.
got no, I have no value. I have no worth. Nobody would miss me if I'm not here. So when you reach out to a service that's supposed to help and they go, yeah, we'll get to you in a minute, you kind of go, oh, brilliant. Somebody else that hasn't got time for me. So I think you just referencing, again, organizations like Punk Rock Saves Lives, and giving people the direction in terms of, we might not be able to help as individuals and be able to take on every single person that needs help, but if we can signpost you to organizations that can, that can be just as powerful.
Yeah, I
um,
think, and I want to point out something important that you're doing as well, because you have sort of hit upon, you're sharing a bit of a different scenario than because you have talked a lot about not wanting to wake up the next day, and that nobody would care if you weren't there, and things like that. So that is not something that I really struggled with. So I think it's very important that you and I are having this conversation, because people who are here to hear me talk right now are listening to that. And
yeah,
some of them have had those feelings, and they can go, well, shit, this guy that Jaret's talking to had these same feelings, and he's gotten out of it. And what he's saying is exactly true, because, thank God you're a chicken shit, Paul. You know what I mean? Like, you were scared of
yeah,
what that would bring, but thank God, like, that's the scary part. If you were
yeah,
close enough to be having those feelings, to be thinking, not only thinking about how you didn't want to see the next day, but if you were close enough to already be taking stock of who would give a shit if you did it, if you were
yeah,
already doing that, you were fucking close, bro. Like,
yeah. I mean, I still hand on heart maintain that the most important phone call I ever made in my life was to I didn't even call 999. We have a number over here called 111, which is like a non-emergency phone number, like into the NHS. It's kind of like calling your doctor effectively to kind of get advice. And I've told this story before on previous podcasts, and I speak about it quite openly. I had raced off with a pint bottle of cider, and probably somewhere in the region of several hundred different tablets of medications, the paracetamol, antidepressants, stronger painkillers. And I was sat in a field, and I just I just didn't want to wake up the next day. That I did not want to wake up, but what I was more scared about was getting it wrong and trying and then ending up waking up the next day and having to be like, fuck, it didn't work. Like, can't even do that right. So I called 111, and I was in absolute bits. And the person I spoke to, I didn't even get their name. I can't remember their name. But this person saved my life without a shadow of a doubt, because I said, I explained my situation. I was like, I'm sat in a field. I've got a pint of cider. I've got all these medications. I gave my age, my height, my weight. And I was like, look, I just want to make sure if I take all this, will it do the job? And before I even realized what was going on, like an ambulance arrives and these paramedics like chatted to me. And it was the most important phone call I've ever made. Because, had I not made that phone call, like fuck knows what could have happened. But the point of this it's not a pity party. It's not feel sorry for me. It's to give people that ability to take comfort, but also to feel empowered. You will have people, somebody listening to this may be really struggling. You may not want to wake up tomorrow, and you may be thinking of various ways of doing things, but I promise you, waking up the next day can potentially be the best thing that ever happens. Because I tend not to use quotes too much from TV shows, but I was watching a TV show over here. We got a program called Rob versus Ramesh. They're two comedians. They're fucking hilarious, and they one of their episodes in their most recent series, they became stuntmen. So they went to Hollywood, worked with Hollywood sort of stunt coordinators, and one of the stunt coordinators who worked on The Fall Guy and loads of other films said, everything you want is on the other side of fear. And it was one of the quotes that I heard, and I just thought, do you know what? That's 100% correct. Because for me, my biggest fear was waking up the next day. But actually, everything that I've achieved ever since is as a result of the fact that I woke up the next day. And it's so true. And I think there will be people listening to this who don't feel like they can, don't feel like they want to. And the only message I can give is find whatever it is, no matter how small, just find that one little thing that makes you go, hold on a minute, I'll give tomorrow a chance. Because if you can do that, you've got the potential then to take the advice that you shared, that we've shared on this episode, where you can start to lay the foundations to bring yourself out of it. Because no matter how shit things get, you cannot have the good without the bad. And sometimes you've got to go through what feels like you've got to completely dismantle the life you have to create the one that you want. And I think, again, you're a prime example of it. If you were to look at everything that you went through in that 2-year period, you'd completely dismantled your life. But look at where you are now. That the band is back together, doing better than ever. You've already said you're bigger now at 30 years in than you ever have been. You've got an amazing wife, an amazing family, amazing pets, and even the relationship with your ex-wife is now a positive in your everyday. And I think if somebody said to you, "Hey, Jaret, you're going to have all this," you probably would have been like, "Mate, you seem more fucked up than I am." But it comes from just making sure you see the next day. A point that I want to come back to. I went on a massive tangent there.
But I think honestly, I think you're right, and I think the reason why I probably didn't get to that point was my kids, because that was what was keeping me going anyway. That was my fight. Yeah. My fight my one thing to hold on to so that I could see the next day, it was my children.
Yeah.
And so at least I had that, I wouldn't have done that to them. I certainly wasn't going to. So I guess I probably thought maybe I'll get in a car wreck and die, that they can accept that, but I definitely never thought about, ending it myself, just because I wouldn't have done that to them. So, but again, I think you're so right. And you know, maybe that's it. You know, who's that one person that you doing something bad to yourself would hurt? You know, you would hurt them more than it hurts. You know, you'd ruin their lives. You know,
Yeah.
and it's such, man. It's interesting too. The other thing you said is like you were worried you'd try and fail.
Yeah.
And you know, and not even just from the, oh, I can't even do that right, but like, imagine being one of those that, and I know someone like this who tried and with a gun and literally disfigured themselves forever. So now they're on the planet and happy, but they're completely just
Yeah.
not even the same person, you
Yeah.
know. And
100%.
you know, I don't know if that's relevant, but I don't know. Fuck, just don't do it.
Yeah, and I think that is, again, I think it's worth highlighting the fact that, you know, when you're in that space, you're not thinking logically, you're not thinking laterally about things. And again, my fear of failure wasn't how much is this going to fuck me up if I get it wrong. It was just the fact that it would just be another thing to add to the list of things that I'm evidently not good at. But again, it's worth having that sobering thought of like, failed attempts fuck people up for a long time. Yeah, and sometimes you may feel like it's your only option, but I promise you the road to recovery is a much more pleasant road to go down than the road to try.
Yeah, and a lot of times the attempt is a cry for help.
Yeah,
and you don't have to, you know, you can get help without doing that. You know, there are other ways for you to get that out there.
Yeah, definitely. And so to slightly change back to a subject that I wanted to kind of touch upon, I'm just conscious of time. I think we could talk for hours, but I think an important thing to touch upon is the role of social media right now, from just highlighting and paying reference to the fact that the world that we live in does make things so much difficult. Again, if you think back to when you started the band, your rise to fame was deemed an overnight success. It took 6 albums. It took many years. I
10
think
years.
you said
10 years, yeah.
10 years before you really started to feel like you'd made it. But at the time, that was deemed an overnight success because we didn't have the luxury of Instagram and TikTok where you can blow up and genuinely be an overnight success.
Right.
And whilst that was probably a frustration at the time because people had to really work hard to become a success, not that you don't work hard now, but luck is a lot easier to come by in the world of social media. I think the challenge that we've got is social media creates this platform for so many people to feel like they have a voice, which is great. The challenge we have is it gives a voice to a lot of people who don't realize you don't always have to use that voice. And I've experienced it on TikTok in particular. I do live Q&As. I do lots of things for free on TikTok, and you will get people that will say the most horrendous things to you. And I like to have a bit of banter. I've been through quite a lot. I've tried to take my own life a couple of times. It takes a little bit more than somebody suggesting that I'm a rapist or a pedo for me to get a little bit upset. So I will have a bit of banter and a back and forth with people. But you alluded to it yourself. For kids today, I got bullied at school because I was short. But if I went home, my bullies didn't follow me home. They weren't in my bedroom. They weren't there going, you're fucking short at 10 p.m. at night. It was just a source of anxiety about going to school the next day. Whereas now it's very hard to switch off from these things because, again, kids want to be active on social media because they want to keep up to date with what's going on with their favorite celebrities. Everybody feels like they're one post away from getting some form of adulation, justification, gratification, or fame, which is exciting and it's great. The challenge is that allure that it creates, that desire to stay on platforms, comes at the expense of, for a lot of people, of their own happiness, because in order to run the possibility of being the next big overnight success for a viral video, they have to open themselves up to not be able to get away from shit. And again, you alluded to it yourself in terms of the hate that you've had from people, comments you've had. What one piece of advice, and I think this is probably a good place to sort of round things off, what one piece of advice would you give to anyone listening to this to help them better manage in a society where it is much easier for people to not just have opinions, but to share them, even if those opinions are fucking shit, and just highlight the fact that they are, by definition, an arsehole.
You know, somebody said this to me the other day, and I think to simplify it, the quote would be something like, "Nobody better than you would ever say anything negative to you." You know,
Yep.
nobody, for example, I'm in a really good band. I happen to think we're the greatest band that's ever lived.
I would agree.
I'm not going to see some band and go, "You guys are fucking awful." I would never do that, right? This band and this band right here, though, this band has jealousy of this band or whatever. This is where negativity gets. It's
Yeah.
You know, it's just, and as you said it so well, you've got some great quotes in this episode, but you said, you know, people who have it's giving a voice to people who really shouldn't have it. And, you know, and people or shouldn't, they don't really, here's what, to sum up what you said, just because we think it doesn't mean we need to say it. And we wouldn't say it. Like, imagine if we all said what we think all the time, like just in thought bubbles or whatever. Like, everybody be dead, right? We'd just be fighting and shooting each other all the time, right? But the thing is that, like, somebody needs to just always say something, you know, something negative about, just because they think it. And it's like, you're scrolling past. Look, I don't mind taking the hit on this. You're scrolling past me, and you're just like, "Oh my God, that's that guy, man. He really let himself go." Well, you don't fucking know my life. You go back and look at pictures. I've looked the same for 12 years or so. You're thinking about 2003, Jaret. If everybody looked the same for fucking 25 years, no one would age. You know, like, I feel like I've done okay. You know, but you know, they feel like they need to say it. Of course, it doesn't happen quite as much as it has in the past or whatever. And I find social media, when you get to a certain percentage of followers or whatever, it sort of regulates itself. You know, people will be quick to jump on those motherfuckers, right? But what you're saying is someone who's, you know, their followers are the people, and, you know, that they know, or strangers or whatever, and then this negativity comes, you know, again, negative criticism, negativity is just from people who feel terrible about themselves. It's just
100%.
unhappy individuals. You know,
I think I was going to say, I think for me, it's usually a reflection of somebody's own insecurities.
100%.
If somebody cannot watch a piece of content and think, "That's not for me," and scroll on to the next bit without having to say their piece, that's massively a reflection on their own insecurities. And it's something that I try to encourage as many people as possible. If you are getting online hate, you're getting negative comments, whether it's from people you know or from complete strangers, fake accounts, whatever it is, look at it this way. And it got covered on a previous episode. Look at what they're actually saying. Are they attacking the content itself with merit, i.e., have you said something that's inaccurate? And they are, albeit maybe doing it in a bit of a cunty way, but basically saying what you said is incorrect, and therefore this isn't good content? Or are they attacking you as an individual? Because if you've put something out there and somebody's response is to attack you as an individual based on physical characteristics, based on anything that inherently makes you, that's not a reflection of what you've put out. It's not even a reflection of you as a person. You've made them feel intimidated by their own lack of personal action and their own individual circumstance, and their way of dealing with it is not to reflect inwards and go, "Hey, this person's doing more than I am. What can I do to do better?" They go, "Fuck it, bring them down a peg." And
yeah. You know, I am from a small town, and I wouldn't say that I got bullied. But I was a fat kid, so I did get made fun of from time to time. But I was really, I'm very quick-witted. I always have been. So for the most part, unless I thought they were going to beat the shit out of me, I could make them feel terrible about themselves, you know, with my words. And as I look through Facebook and shit, you know, I could just honestly say that my life turned out way better than every single one of them, you know?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and,
100%.
and I guarantee you I'm happier in my life, you know, and I guarantee you my children are probably happier than their children. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where, you know, I just say to my kids all the time, man, if you just take the high road all the time, you know, just take the high road all the time, you know, and sometimes it's going to suck because sometimes there's people down there trying to shoot you down, you know, like trying to get you down here on their level. But guess what? Eventually their road runs out and
Yeah.
you just keep going, you know, and then some other people on the low road are going to come out and they're going to be like, hey, come down here. And you stay right up there. And then their road runs out and that's how life is. Just take that high road as best you can. And you just drive, you know,
Absolutely.
and don't sweat it, man. Don't sweat the small shit. Honestly, if you're putting content out on the internet, you should just assume that 20%, 30% of the things that people say are going to be negative. So that's on you. Okay. So in other words, if you don't think that you're mentally ready for that or you're unstable for that, but you still want to share, then share it on private links and send it to the people that you want to see it. But don't share it to the world if you're not ready for some fucking dude eating Cheetos on his couch in Ohio whose fucking belly's hanging out and he's fucking smoking a cigarette and his cat has one leg and the fucking TV doesn't work and he stinks and his fucking glasses are broken and he's just the worst smelling human being of all time to just be like, you're ugly.
Yeah.
If you're not ready for that, then it's not time for you to start sharing content.
100%. And again, another piece of advice that I always give, I view every interaction on social media nowadays as transactional, because if you are trying to grow a page and trying to grow a following, the algorithms don't look at if the comments are positive or negative. They just go, fuck, there's loads of comments on this, we'll show it to more people. So I take a slightly flippant approach in that if somebody has got 2 hours to waste trying to have a go at me, I will continue to poke that there until they run out of insults, on the basis that it's only going to benefit me out of the two people. I can quantify a financial benefit to posts doing well. They can't. That is time they'll never get back. Whereas,
but you have thick skin and I have thick skin. So I will get into it with someone online, and my buddy Daniel, or my assistant tour manager who lives in the UK, Daniel, will just text me and go, all right, buddy. And I'll be like, you're right. And I'll stop, right? Because I should have never let him get to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, somebody else would have been much happier for me to respond to their positive comment. You know,
yeah,
that's what I should have done in the first place. You know, so I think, you know, from my standpoint, you know, I would say just don't engage. Take the comment, even say, I appreciate the comment, you know, and that's a great thing to respond back to negativity. Just like, thank you for the tick. I appreciate it, you know, and move on with your life. You know, they certainly don't know you. They certainly don't know who you are as a person, and they certainly feel terrible about themselves. So
100%. And even if it is somebody that does know you, that's posting comments, and somebody that's bullying you, that's again another reason why just to respond in exactly that manner and say, hey, yeah, thanks very much for that. Because just because they know you, if that's their attitude and their approach, they don't deserve to be a positive part of your life. So don't give them the ability to negatively impact. You know, just shut them down and say, yeah, cheers for the comment, off you go. Unless of course you are like me and you've got time to waste and you're happy to have a bit of back and forth and it's not going to ruin your day, then by all means go back and tell them why they're a prick. But in the most part, I completely agree. Yeah, I think sometimes it's better just to not rise to it and say, hey, yeah, cheers, thanks for that, appreciate it, take it on board, and then move on. I said probably about 10 minutes ago we could speak for hours, and I'm sure we absolutely could. This has been an incredible episode. I'm absolutely so grateful to have you on. I really do appreciate it. Before we disappear again, I'm sure most people will know who you are, where to find you, but just in case people want to tune in for both your musical content, but also the fact that you can share some nuggets of wisdom for those struggling with their mental well-being, where can they find you?
Yeah, go to jaretrayreddick.com. That's got everything there that I do. But bowlingforSoup.com, JARET2113 on social media, except TikTok. I'm just Jaret Reddick. And I'm pretty active. And I do try to answer back when I can. And yeah, and if you're struggling, a good place to start is Punk Rock Saves Lives. Again, we don't have a chapter in the UK yet, but we are working on it. And but at least there's some resources there. You can also go to the Bowling for Soup fan page on Facebook. If you ever need just a friend to talk to, you'll find one there. Doesn't even matter if you like my band. Just go there and say, is anybody able to chat? I'm having a hard time. Someone will be there for you.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I echo that massively. The music scene, even if you're not into specific bands, like you said, the music scene is such a welcoming space. The amount of friends that you make through gigs, live music festivals, fan pages, it's incredible, and people really do like to help lift other people up. So yeah, if you are struggling, there's some great places to go to. In the meantime, Jaret, thank you so much. This has been unreal. It's been an amazing experience for me personally, and I managed to do most of it without sort of gushing too heavily about how much I love bowling for soup. So I think we did a good job there. But for everyone listening, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week on the next episode, and yeah, if you need any help, reach out. We're always here.